would you say is the biggest thing that you're trying to accomplish from this product?
Hmm, that's a good question. Two things. Well, obviously, I want to make some money with it, but the best way to make money is to identify a need in the marketplace and provide value. So ultimately, I want to provide value. Credit education is something, we've talked about it before on the other podcasts that we've done. Nobody teaches us about credit. We don't get it in school. College, if you go, most of the time we get it from our parents, and unfortunately our parents aren't usually the greatest resource for credit education. So we're kind of flying blind a lot of times. So education, a lot of people focus on the repair portion of this, but I think the education system is probably even more important, to know how to play the credit game so you can win.
So just educating the masses.
Yep. And then hopefully that can perpetuate it in terms of people passing that knowledge down to their kids and things like that, because the credit bureaus, the banks, the financial institutions, they all take advantage of us. Always, all the time. They always have.
Mhm.
I mean, look at how many times Fargo's been sued for screwing people over.
True. You mentioned that your credit score was really bad at a point in time, I think under 300. How did you work your way out from that? If that was your lowest, what was your highest?
Well, I don't know exactly. Excuse me. I don't know exactly what my lowest was, because I kind of ignored it for a little while because I didn't want to look at it. I went cash, but then finally, when I kind of got my head back in the game, I was like, okay, I need to get back on the board. When I pulled my credit through a credit monitoring service, it was really low fours, like 410, 405, maybe 415, in that area. And it took me 26 months to get it back to 800.
About 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, obviously that's time, it's a commitment, but it's not a linear progression either. It's not like you go at the same speed. When you start getting a bunch of this negative stuff off and you start intentionally building the right kind of credit, you can see some pretty quick increases in your score right away. But to get to truly exceptional scores, you gotta grind it out a little bit, because one of the biggest factors, or one of the factors that FICO uses in scoring, is average age of accounts. So I was in my mid 40s, and my credit profile was like 2 years old.
Wow.
So that's something that only time can cure.
So they really want to see longevity.
It's an ongoing thing. I mean, credit is something that you have to pay attention to. But getting yourself out of that hole and getting yourself to something that's respectable, you don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to get approved? Like, I've done that walk of shame out of dealerships, trying to get a car, and they're like, no. So, that sucks. It's demoralizing, man. It's hard on the ego. It's especially as a guy, we got a pride factor in there too. So, getting from that point to something respectable where you're going to get some good credit cards, or you're going to get finance on a car without a problem, or even buy a house, getting to that point can happen fairly quickly. You can get there, but getting the truly premium scores, that you gotta dig in for the long haul. That's not going to happen overnight.
So with this product that you're pushing, is it just great for personal credit, or is it good for personal, business, mortgage, like etc., all these other things, or just strictly one thing?
This is personal credit, and there's a big dividing line between personal credit and business credit. Because business credit, you're building, if you're doing it right, you're building it completely separate from your social security number. You're building it under the EIN number of your corporate structure, whether it's LLC, S Corp, C Corp, whatever that is, and you build a completely and legally separate credit profile. So that's a whole different thing entirely. But I'm glad you brought that up, because obviously I still have the business credit program, like the full service credit program that I do. But now over the next, well, actually, after I get to Texas, I'm gonna really start digging in and putting together a much cheaper do-it-yourself business credit course as well, because that is something that is a powerful tool for small business owners, because it gives you access to a lot more capital. And you know, in the events that something happens, if you built it right and you end up going out of business, yeah, that business credit profile will go, but your personal credit won't take the hit, which is really, so you get that legal separation. And that's a really the same thing, you know, same reason why people will set up an LLC or something, because that way it's not in your name. So a legally separate entity affords you some protection.
Right.
Mhm. And tax breaks.
Yep. Yeah. Lot of tax advantages if you're structured correctly.
What would you say is the biggest thing that someone will learn from taking your course?
I think just in general, how the credit game is played, because there's a lot of things in credit that just don't make sense. You know, like for example, if you've got collections on your credit report, and like, okay, maybe you had something happen in your life financially, or you're sick or something. Okay, now you're back on your feet and you're like, okay, I gotta get my credit back in order. One of the first things that people think of to do is like, okay, I'm gonna go back and, you know, I'm gonna pay off these old collections. Step one. And that makes sense. But the way the credit system works is, once something is on the credit report as a collection or charge off, the balance doesn't have any effect on the score anymore. So what that means is, if you go back and you pay off these old collections, your score doesn't go up. And that's completely counterintuitive. You think, hey, I did the right thing. I went back and paid off some old collections. I should be rewarded for that in terms of my score. It doesn't work that way.
So what should they do instead?
What's that?
What should they do instead?
Well, there's a couple different approaches that you can use, and a lot of it is going to have to do with the nature of the collection, the amount of the collection, the type of the collection. But most of the time, going after them in a credit repair scenario and getting them removed from the credit report. You don't have to have them paid off to get them removed. So ideally, if you just get them off the credit report without having to pay them, that's the ideal situation, because paying them off doesn't remove them. And as a matter of fact, paying them off can actually kind of set you back away. And what I mean by that is like these collections. Let's say we had the ones that were 3 years old, right? There's a federal statute of limitations on how long things can remain on the credit report, and that's 7 years. Yeah. So if these collections are 3 years old, they're going to fall off in 4 years organically. If you go back and pay them off, not only does that not help your score, but since there's activity on the account, you actually reset the clock on that 7 years. So you're shooting yourself in the foot by trying to do the right thing. So, you know, just a bunch of stuff in the credit world that just doesn't make sense like this, you know? So I think that's the biggest thing, what you were talking about, glasses. I think that's the biggest thing to take away from it is, like, there's a lot of things that you would assume based on common sense would work where they don't. So that, you know, just that, like I had a guy a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and he had 3 charge-off credit cards. Okay. He called me up. We talked about it. Okay. I quoted him a price. He's like, man, I don't have the money right now. But when I get my tax refund, we'll go after him. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, in the meantime, don't pay him off. I told him just how I told you guys, right? This is what happened. And there were 3 credit cards, a total of about $7,000. So he called me, you know, like May or something. And he's like, man, so when I got my tax return, I paid off those credit cards. I'm like, why? I told you not to. He's like, yeah, my credit score didn't go up. I'm like, dude, I don't want to be that guy, but I told you so. What the hell? You know, yeah, that just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, well, that's $7,000 you're not going to get back, and I still got to get these off your credit reports. So, you know, if you could save people that kind of money, you know, there's value there.